Good evening everyone, sorry for the wait, but tonight we will be discussing a Planet Zoo DLC idea that I've went over very briefly in some of the previous episodes. The idea of a Planet Zoo Aquarium DLC expansion. There'll be a lot of new features and animals that we'll be covering, so let's not waste any further time. First off, a bit of the basics I go over every DLC ideas video. I'm keeping this realistic, so no Megalodons or Godzillas or anything like that. And secondly, I'll be keeping these realistic based off what you would see in a zoo, typically. I won't be adding great white sharks or blue whales or anything else like that, nor will I be adding orcas or dolphins or larger sharks as the aquariums that, in real life, that do house these animals often aren't very good at caring for their tank size requirements. They're often very, very small. Here I've placed some of the basic new additions, such as, adding in the tanks themselves to the game, the ability to choose between saltwater and freshwater, and aquarium management. Starting off with the animals, we have the saltwater content, including the sarcastic fringehead, which is a truly beautiful animal, the common seahorse, the clownfish, the regal blue tang, the hammerhead shark, the green sea turtle, the grammer, and the yellow tang. For the decorations, we have some plants, such as some animals can be placed as decorations, such as coral and sea anemones, as well as some plants like seaweed and seagrass. As well as this, we also have fish tank decorations. There could also be larger alternatives of these for larger fish, such as the hammerhead sharks or the turtles, which aren't fish but aquarium animals still. It's not just the saltwater fish which will be included in these DLC ideas, we also have the freshwater animals. These I've chosen to be the electric eel, the goldfish, the tetra, the guppy, the freshwater angelfish and the giant gourami. So a few of these will be a lot more recognisable than some of the saltwater fish. For decoration, we have fish tank decorations again. I have decided there will be a difference between the salt and freshwater decorations, I'll get onto in a bit. We also have things like rock ornaments, some freshwater aquatic plants like Java ferns and Amazon swords, as well as the pre-existing aquatic plants in the game. A lot of those are freshwater. We may have wrapped up our section on the freshwater fish for the time being. There's just one little thing right now I want to go back to for saltwater. Close relatives of the previously mentioned sea anemones and coral, the jellyfish is an animal that no one could forget about in an aquarium. In the game, they could possibly be the easiest animals to take care of. This is the simple fact that all they really need is good water conditions and not too many jellyfish in a tank, and they'll be happy to go. They're not really intelligent enough to worry about, oh, you don't have enough enrichment items or terrain management or plants. This is especially good for my next point, which is these would be really good for aesthetics. This is a simple fact that jellyfish can be basically put in any sort of tank. You can design your own jellyfish tank with little pieces and models or whatever. The following are some jellyfish tanks I found online. Back to what I said earlier about decorations being different between saltwater and freshwater. I think, from what I'm imagining, we could keep the fish tank toys the same. Maybe there's small, medium and large variants of each thing, and maybe if you want the rock ornaments as well to follow that. But I'm imagining if we had architecture pieces, like walls and everything. I imagine the saltwater would have a very similar theme to the aquatic DLC, as you can see here, which in fact was inspired by public aquarium architecture. And I also see especially, these bits here and there, seems to be a bit of, when you go to the beach and there's normally when you're going by harbours and things like that, a very similar theme, a very similar aesthetic. And for freshwater, I took to looking at the South America DLC, and the architecture featured in that, because I feel like we could do something very similar with the architecture in freshwater. In addition to what I've already mentioned, I've added a separate section for unique animals. Now these are animals that I included in here because I feel like they could function a bit differently to the other animals in this DLC. Obviously the sea turtle in the saltwater section would be a bit different, but not by too much. However, I've selected 3 animals here that are worth discussing. Firstly is the octopus, which is one of the most popular aquarium animals. Managing an octopus in a game, however, would be quite hard because not only would they be quite aggressive towards any other fish species in their aquarium, they would actually need enrichment items. Maybe like, for example, the enrichment items we already have underwater, such as the little floating submarine that's like tied by a little chain, that, like a smaller version of that probably. And octopi have been known in the past to attempt to escape aquariums, and they are pretty good at escaping, so that would be something we'd have to be on the lookout for if we added them. The arapaima is a freshwater fish and one of the largest in the world. This is a fish that breathes air to have its gills work, which means that this is a fish that can drown, which is pretty embarrassing for a fish. These are heavily armoured and, despite their size, incredibly agile fish. They can even launch themselves out of the water, which may sound quite interesting, but this would pose quite a safety risk to zookeepers or guests in the game, as they could easily launch out, knock someone out and make them fall into the water and drown. It can happen. And the leafy sea dragon, well, it doesn't exactly have any differences between, like seahorses and that, how they would work in the game, but is it not unique? Maybe not in a way I deem the octopi and arapaima to be, but it's unique. In addition to things like fish tanks and aquariums and saltwater and freshwater and management and what have you, we also have some additional content which, I'm not exactly envisioning completely 100% should happen if this were to become a DLC, but it's something I think would be a nice addition. Firstly, you have fish feeding, so these could either be, when you go to a nature park and you can buy like duck feed and you can feed ducks, something similar to that but with the fish, or this could be another form of like an event where the zookeeper could like feed the fish and like the guests watch. Secondly, we have the rock pools. I don't mean like actual real life rock pools, sort of like the mini exhibits of aquariums. So like little pools you can place down that have like starfish, sea anemones. And the interesting thing about these, which maybe if you have sea anemones, maybe you don't want to do this with, but you could have the guests be able to touch the animals inside. Thirdly, we have the tunnels, which were mentioned earlier, but this would be incredibly popular, and if one of these 3 were to be added, I would recommend this. And it already does sort of exist in the game with that well-known underwater tunnel glitch, but wouldn't it just be better to create an aquarium without need for glitches, And that brings us to the end of tonight's video. I do apologise for the lack of uploads recently. In fact, I feel like I've been owing you a load of videos throughout basically the whole year. But just remember, November tends to be a pretty good month for my channel, so, maybe more videos then. Plus, uploads are starting to get better in December, so we should be getting a little bit more back on track in the coming weeks.